Balaji, Satej and Diptesh will join at 5. That's what they've mentioned. And Kaushik will join in another 10 minutes. So should we start the discussions?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Okay. Has Professor Nandan also joined?
Yeah, I'm here.
So, okay.
I'll wave for everyone's benefit.
Good evening, sir. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this for this roundtable discussions, Decode Digital, the AI Ops Roundtable. I want to take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Nandan Sudarsanam. Dr. Nandan will be moderating this discussions, and we're very glad to have him as he's one of the top AI influencers in this country. Dr. Nandan is a faculty member in the Department of Management Studies and a core member of Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence at IIT Madras. He's earned his PhD from Engineering Systems Division at MIT. Dr. Nandan's interests actually in research lie in experimentation, machine learning, abstraction of data models, algorithms, etc. So thank you so much, Dr. Nandan, for joining us today and for agreeing to moderate these discussions on this AI Ops Roundtable. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Abhijita, and thank you for this opportunity. Thanks to Gabs for bringing this together and giving me this opportunity to meet with such eminent industry leaders. So it's a complete pleasure to serve as a moderator for such a big panel. As an academic, for some of us, we actually do enjoy connecting with industry personally. I've been an academic for about 10 to 15 years in the space of data science, and I actually believe I caught it during the time of its upswing, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the changes that have happened in an academic setting. And simultaneously, to see industry adoption happen has been something of a very enjoyable experience. The good thing is, so I personally like the academic industrial interface because we as academics get such interesting research problems from industry, and it gives us an opportunity to be industry relevant. And the good news is, at least in India, this landscape is changing quite a bit. We are having a lot of push from the academic settings to be industry relevant. So gone are the days when you thought the professor was strictly confined to teaching. And now, in fact, IIT Madras ranks #1 in the MHRD rankings over the last 5 years, primarily because we are serving as trailblazers in the academic industry collaboration. So the good thing is a lot of people are seeing the extreme importance of having this kind of a nexus. And so again, thank you all so much for this opportunity. And I hope this session serves to, benefit all of us and enable us to learn. So without much further ado, let me briefly jump into how we might choose to spend the next 1.5 hours. I personally thought that we're having leaders from so many different verticals, and what AI and data science mean in one vertical might be different. So one very interesting thing is to perhaps see right? So part of this I have structured in the form of questions for each vertical. And I thought perhaps one thing we could do is start off by some questions specific to each vertical. So I'm looking around and to make sure that we have participants from all all the individual verticals. Let me, so we have 15 participants. Okay, so let me start with those who have joined us, right? So I see if we were to choose the winning vertical, it would be the FMCG, right? So we have Sudhakar from Cavencare. I understand that Milind from Supermax is also here. So let me start off by posing a question on the FMCG front, right? So FMCGs are subject to a really complex market structure, right? So things like consumption patterns that vary from staples versus discretionary spending. So in addition to having a really complex supply chain on one end, to looking at really the market at the other end, and not to mention that during something like a pandemic, I'm sure there is a lot of changes in terms of what gets truly consumed. What is really a need or a necessity versus what is really a luxury, what is discretionary. And this is also changing thanks to digitization, right? So the amount of effort you will put into consuming something, if it's easily available versus if you have to go somewhere to consume it, all of this is different. First of all, do you feel like, given the complex landscape you're in, that you have enough data to understand and manage these complexities towards smarter decision making, right? I mean, and is AI basically there in the front of being able to take in all this data and take in all these complexities? And when I say complexities, I mean it both in both ends, right? One is consumer and customer demand. What is a target audience versus what is a consumption audience, that kind of hierarchy is there. What is discretionary, what is staple? And then there is the other end, right, which is the supply chain. And what about the bullwhip effect? What about this effects where the demand propagates, and then you're having so many layers between you and the producer and you and the consumer. Given that, do you have the data, and where is AI in terms of helping you navigate the space? Perhaps we could start with Mr. Sudhakar from Cavencare.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Nandan. Interesting question you ask. On one perspective, you're asking about the data, the lineage of data and the availability of data. And on the other side, you're asking about AI, how does that play a role there? So if I have to answer, we have multiple systems in Cavencare, right? We have an enterprise system and we have a distributed management system or a DMS system, and we work on a typical distributor model. So that means we pretty much have primary data and what we sell it to the distributors, the distributor data. What we lack is, of course, we can also track the sales which goes to the retail outlets, but we cannot track the consumer data, the actual consumer data. We are not yet in B2C. We've started the e-commerce channel, but it's very nascent. It's just launched recently. Having said that, identifying consumption patterns, how we look at is what is happening in a specific region at specific outlet level, right? We have data to a certain extent over there. But again, we cannot correlate that to a consumption pattern. We noticed slight shift during the first wave of COVID, where some of our products which were categorized as essential products were picking up sales. We also had health and hygiene, which caught up pretty well during the first phase of COVID, and slowly it started to die out. And our personal care division started out. Kevin Care is a very diversified business, right? We have professional care, salons, and stuff. Those really suffered, given that there was a huge lockdown. Now, how is AI helping here? AI is not helping in this space at this point in time, the way we have built it. It's more closely working on the data analytics side and the core engineering, data engineering side is where we are collecting all this information. And of course, we have built predictive models to give prediction scores on what products can go well in which region. What we are looking at AI is our AI division is broken into three parts. One is core NLP, natural language processing. The second one is conversational AI, and the third one is computer vision. So we are looking at NLP and NLP largely to understand preferences of consumers. So we conduct something called a survey, right? We have a lot of surveys which happens, and these are in monthly. So we are in the process of converting those conversation which happens on audio or on telephonic into English, translate it into English, transcribe it, and then extract information out of that on understanding the preferences, understanding what brand they prefer, why do they prefer Kevin Care products. These are the intents are automatically extracted out, and these are like 20 minutes conversation, right? Proud to say that there are very few players in the market who do such kind of work. A 20 minutes conversation in local colloquial languages, translated, transcribed, translated, and then identifying intent and context of this. This information is then fed into the sales team and into the R&D team. That is how we are trying to understand the consumer behavior.
Interesting. Mr. Milind, maybe could you comment on the same question? I'd be happy to also repeat it if you feel you would. It would help with have more color.
Yeah, I think if you can help me with the question again.
So the principle is, see, when you look at FMCG, it's a fairly complex structure, right? Like it's both customer facing on the one side, and it also has multiple players on the other side. So it's not like just it's not a single entity as a manufacturing facility, right? You have a long supply chain leading up to getting the product. So there's a lot of complexity there. So you have inventory management models, you have ERP systems, you have bullwhips effects and things like that on one side, which is a very complex problem. And on the other side also, on the consumer front, there are multiple channels of marketing. There are multiple channels of advertising. There's multiple channels of consumption. So you have the digital consumption, you have the online consumption versus the retail store consumption. And then you have retail vendors. So there are so many pieces in the puzzle along the way. So it might be much simpler in another industry if you are the only player there, right? All the data is with you. Now the data is split across multiple entities. So first of all, do you have the data to make any meaningful contribution? And where do you think AI can play a role in a complex structure like this?
Thank you, Professor, for repeating the questions. Thank you, Kalzoom, for inviting me for these discussions. Look forward for some knowledge gain in these conversations with the industry experts. The question, what Professor you are asking is specific to the FMCG. I'm a part of the FMCG, not a completely FMCG. We are a consumer goods product company. We are the second largest blade manufacturer globally. And we stay focused and serving the economical segment of the market.
Yeah,
we are a Make in India, born in India company with a global footprint. Our major focus is on two sides. One side of the business is manufacturing, and another side of the business is a consumer who is consuming the product, my product. Now, my consumption happen in the two manner. One is B2B, whereby saloons buy my product and they use it for their consumers. Second is the individuals buy my product for the individual consumption.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to deal with the both kind of customer, and their needs and expectations are quite different.
Mm.
Which is need to be built in during the my production side or my manufacturing side. So the integrations between the all the puzzles or all the pieces what you have described is
Mm-hmm.
very, very important. There is a internal data, there is a external data.
Mm-hmm.
The external data is not necessarily from my industry. I have to keep my eyes and ears open for the all the industries, because we have seen the side effects of the industries happening on the other industries.
Mm-hmm.
So I cannot say that I need to only collect the data for the blade manufacturers.
Yeah.
I also have to collect the data for other industry, which is indirectly influencing my industry.
Yeah.
So there is a huge data available. To make the meaning out of that data, the AI is very, very critical.
Mm.
That brings the predictability in my forecast, my planning, and my budgeting exercise. The major area for me is the manufacturing,
Mm.
because being the niche business, there are very, very few handful of manufacturers of the blade globally.
Mm.
So how to improve the OEE, overall effectiveness of my manufacturing, is very critical. How to reduce
Understood.
how to reduce the waste,
Mm-hmm.
so that every metal which is used is
Mm-hmm.
consumed to generate the right number of products, what we call the steel average.
Right.
So for me, AI is helping and should be helping in the both the end of my business.
Mm-hmm.
One is manufacturing, where I have to give the best cost-effective quality product to
Mm-hmm.
remain competitive and stay in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, reaching out to the right consumer
Mm-hmm.
by improving the predictability in my planning and forecasting process.
Understood. Understood.
So if
Let
I
me.
may interrupt for a minute,
Sure.
Mr.
Sure.
Sudeep from Fortis has also joined. I just wanted to inform you. Good
Perfect.
evening, Sudeep.
Yeah, hi, good evening.
Hello, Mr.
Hello, Mr.
Sudeep.
Sudeep. Hi, Mr.
Yeah,
Sudeep.
hi. Hi,
Thank you for
hi.
taking the time. I hope all is well and good.
Yeah, no, it's just work. So thank you for making time.
Should we say just work?
Yeah, it's just work.
Good.
Mm.
So since you have just joined, let's put you on the spotlight, sir. So sir, we've just been talking, along the lines of verticals. We just heard from Mr. Milind and Sudhakar on the FMCG side on how AI and data analytics is playing an important role. We heard about very interesting things like the use of NLP and so on to understand customer sentiment, and as to how AI, particularly in FMCGs, is operating on both ends of the spectrum, which is both the the customer side as well as the manufacturing side. Now, I wanted to use this to segue to you, because now AI in healthcare is also a very exciting area, isn't it? It's highly varied in scope, in the sense that, again, it hits at almost all the entire spectrum of the value chain. So if I were to think of this in the healthcare context, you have at one end of the spectrum robotic surgery and healthcare bots, or real-time diagnostic assistance, all of which is being touted as the next big thing. And all of this is very patient and doctor centric. It's in the limelight. But you also have a lot of more AI that's happening on ERP systems and claims processing and things like that. Now, where do you personally see value, right, in this entire spectrum? Where do you think the push is right now, and where do you think the push is going to be tomorrow?
Okay. Well, fine. You'll have to pardon me. I'm wearing a mask. The reason is I'm in the hospital.
Sir, you're on mute. We heard you
Am I
initially.
audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is the reason I'm wearing a mask as well. Now, pretty pertinent question, and I would rather like it to be short and simple, in the sense that yes, we do see value in AI, and mostly it is in diagnostics. We have been approached for training certain bots. See, AI cannot happen until you have trained the machine. So training those bots, the normal business AI tools don't work for us. They have to be, they have to be, I was in clinical space, and trust me, in clinical space only it is making sense for us at the moment. It is, people have yet not started thinking of training bots in the financial services within healthcare. So we also have we are a corporate, we have our accounts payable, we have our accounts receivables and everything, all the modules you can think of an ERP, we have them. Most recently, the only automated processing which was called out, and I would not call it AI, was in a step towards robotic process automation, wherein somebody said that, can you do something about my, the discussion started very interestingly by saying that we have to get audits done and we have to scan documents and send it over to the auditors. And it started during the pandemic. Conducting the audit became a pain, because you give them ERP access, but they need sample documents.
Sir, I think you're on mute again. Yes.
Yeah, no, sorry. So I am using my handheld device to connect. Something happened and I had to be at the hospital, work related only, nothing. It was just work. So first thing which came to us in AI on the business side of it, in operations side of it, was a automated invoice processing bot, which we may be piloting pretty soon. But as far as in the last 2-3 years is concerned, we also did not, and nobody approached us for AI in business operations.
The mute.
Patient care has been targeted. So
I'm sorry, sir, we didn't hear you in between. You ended with nothing. No, there's been no requirement on the business side, and after that you cut off.
Yeah, I did not say much thereafter. So I said nobody till about last year, nobody, and we also did not pay much heed to AI. I'll be honest here. Neither we were pushy nor business was pushy about AI in normal business operations. However, we were pushy on AI for the last 3.5-4 years on the clinical, on upping, taking the level of care to the next level. So just 1 second, please. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah. Rakesh, I'll take 5 minutes. I'm on a call. So yes, we have a company which is our parent company. We are looking at mining the data and training the bots, using that data to train the bots to diagnose tuberculosis from the ultrasounds and X-rays which are conducted. So we have huge lot of images, and the only impediment here is not just AI. The impediment is also to do it with a factor of not leaking this data. This is healthcare data, and we have to be very, very careful. It is as important as financial data, and hence we are taking all precautions in terms of taking consents from patient before you putting these data elements to use. It is not just a small disclaimer in my form saying that I can use your data we explain, we record, and then make that data usable. We do thousands of USGs per month in Fortis, around 26 hospitals. And it's a huge data chunk by any standards and by any quality, not just volume standards, by any quality standards also. So the only AI Fortis at the moment is looking at is diagnostics, and that too radiology diagnostics. We are participating with Government of India. We're taking steps to further see how we can perfect this model.
Very interesting, sir. Perhaps I could take what you said and compare notes with the folks from GABS. I know Balaji, Chandra. We work a lot with healthcare service providers and people in the healthcare ecosystem more broadly at a global stage. Where could you comment on what we just heard from Mr. Sudeep? Where do you also see a lot of traction? And it's a twofold question. The second part is, how much cross-fertilization do you actually think there is in the AI space? The benefits of one being used for the other, and so on and so forth.
It's interesting. Thank you, Professor. It's interesting that Mr. Sudeep mentioned what he just mentioned about the tuberculosis case study. We are working with Kaiser in the US, where we are actually working with the orthopedics to apply AI on the MRI scans and be able to come up with diagnosis. We just completed phase 1, and we are actually now moving on to phase 2, which is to expand beyond orthopedics and beyond MRI scans. Can we do chest X-rays? Can you do CT scans and so on? Actually, we are using AI and Azure ML to be able to drive some of that as a platform to be able to do that. That's number one. And number two, our focus is about in the healthcare and in hospitals. We work with our 60% of our customer base is hospitals. Mostly in the US, we started little now in the Middle East and in India, but we support everything from analytics, HI, hospital information systems, and everything. And again, people are looking forward because of the regulatory requirements and the nature of the data or the metadata itself, that being a challenge between one system to the other. We are actually working with the IIT Madras and professor to help do some innovative models of being able to find COVID, non-COVID, proactive areas, clusters, find something new in the oncology area. So we are really applying AI there. And secondly, most of the hospitals have run into cash crunch because of the elective surgeries not happening, and they're depending on the federal government for aid. So they would like to reduce the cost of running the IT operations. So our AI ops platform, Zero Incident Framework, which is what is you're seeing on the screen, has helped hospitals to reduce their IT operational run costs in a significant way, up to the tune of about 60%. But more importantly, the clinicians, the experts, dentists and orthopedics and radiologists have come back and said that the earliest systems were so slow for us to enter data. So in a 15-minute window, if they were talking to a patient, they were only spending about 5 minutes with the patient and 10 minutes with their back to the patient and on the system. But with the AI solution they have deployed and the AI operational elements which they have deployed, now they feel that they are able to spend more time with the patient because of speed and performance being monitored, tracked, and the operational efficiencies being monitored. So there is definitely two things, right? One is in the clinical aspects, another one is in the operational aspects in healthcare. And that operational aspect applies even to the FMCG, right? We're working with SC Johnson. When Milind and Shiva were talking from Kevin Care and Supermax, they are actually using our AI platform to be able to have uptime of their business processes, of their supply chain, and so on. So interesting areas of conversations, Professor, so far, where we definitely see AI is helping us. And right, you're in the middle of it with helping us and guiding us as to how AI as a service platform, which we're building, is to solve these industry problems. So
absolutely.
Professor, can I comment on your reference to cross-fertilization of AI?
Absolutely, Chandra. I would love to hear from you. Yeah.
Okay. And so again, thanks for all the participants. Any AI system in any domain, Professor, requires good amount of data for learning, analysis, and then to provide insights and foresights. So an AI system should be capable of integration with the multiple data sources, which is what we have heard from Sudeep and Sudhakar and Milind, and collect the data and keep it ready for analysis. So without this setup, no analysis can be done. So that is one. Second, next is the analysis that need to be done on the collected data. In general, all systems go through the historic data, then identify the recurring patterns and non-recurring anomalies. Then it finds the correlation within the patterns and that provide insights. So a platform set up for one domain can be used across other domains. And in this case, that the AIOps platform that we have set up, that zero incident framework, can very well be used in healthcare and for that matter, FMCG and BFSI to collect the data from multiple sources and use. The next is on the ML algorithm that you have developed to detect patterns and anomalies that also can be used across domains with small tweaks to read the EMR data and find out the possible things. Even what Sudeep said, that finding the tuberculosis from a set of images and data, we can use those algorithms with a small tweak. I see definitely this, there is a scope in using some commonly built algorithms across multiple domains.
Interesting. One very quick follow-up question that I had for Mr. Sudeep. You clearly mentioned, for instance, that the focus of AI has been more on the clinical and diagnostic side and less so on the business process side. But could you add a little bit more color as to why? And is it because you don't see ROI on the business process side, or is it that just that you don't have good examples from the AI supply side, or is it that nobody is holding your feet to the fire on that side? So three extreme possible answers to that question, but what do you think?
So good one, pertinent. And I would like to take you to the way we manage IT here. And we have two groups. One is led by the business and the other is led by the clinicals. And we call it the clinical reference group, CRG. It is made of doctors who are technically inclined and equally represented by the specialties. So they propose certain initiatives. We propose from the business side. I would still consider myself as a support staff because I look after IT. So the group which is on the administrative side of it, they have proposed a few initiatives. So we are fairly digitized as far as our operations are concerned, and the burning need is to keep up our business. We are a for-profit healthcare organization, and we have to deliver quality which is worth the money we charge. So if we are not upping the quality there, so if it is like between a product launch versus a system next level upgrade. So we choose the product launch. So last 3.5 years have gone in investing or prioritizing the product launch part of it. However, the next leg is where we are looking at transformation. And when it is July, this month onwards, we are into the implementation of Oracle Fusion SaaS. Along with it, we are taking 2 bots. We are going to pilot those 2 bots in the month of November for invoice processing. So it is just a prioritization of the use case. That's all.
That's all. No, very, very interesting to hear that.
So if I may interrupt again, sorry, good evening,
Yeah,
but Mr. Satej has also joined. Good evening, Satej.
Yeah, good evening all. Thanks. Sorry for joining late.
No, good evening, Satej, and thanks for taking the time to join. Absolutely pleasure, sir, having you.
Not at all. Keeping with our current trend of always catching the next person who joins, I thought it might be a good idea to shift gears to automotive. So we also have Mr. Parna from Unum India out here and Mr. Satej from Fiat. So now automotive is an interesting one, right? Because, if I were to say, characterize in the recent past, right, automotive industry, I would probably say weak demand, existing oversupply, perhaps a changing landscape on how mobility itself is being viewed or taken. I mean, not to mention the pandemic, right? Like it's completely changed our notions of mobility as a necessity. probably automotive is the worst hit, you would say, during the pandemic. Well, at least to some companies, right? And what people, one view at least seems to be that to survive something like this, you need to be a Tesla. And by that, what people are usually referring to is you should not be a car company. You should be something else. How is your organization adjusting to this trend? Whether you are a Fiat or whether you're a components or parts manufacturing to OEMs, as in the case of Uno, when people come out and say mobility as such is dead, and in order to survive the future, you should not be a car company, what are your thoughts, sir? Perhaps we can open it to Mr. Satej, and then we could hear from Mr. Parna.
Yeah, good evening, Nandan. See, as a OEM, the roadmap and the approach for mobility is more to do with connected cars and the mechanism which goes along with the future generation car. I mean, Tesla is a long milestone, but from now till that stage, there are a lot of connected car options being demanded and being addressed by all the OEMs, and which comes with car infotainment, the navigation, as well as the after-sales service and the attendance part. So in that, from the product perspective, lot many things are in demand, lot many things are being addressed, and there's more traction happening with the technology part. With respect to service and overall deployment of mobility in the business functions, business processes, and agility perspective, there is a lot more which is happening from the serviceability aspect. That is right from showroom digitalization, driving the demand, and AR, VR, those aspects, deploying those on mobility platforms, the after-sales service at dealer, as well as training aspects. Lot many use cases are being talked about for mobility deployments. So that completes, I mean, that covers the whole chain, right from consumer till the shop floor, in terms of various stages or a life cycle. A car goes from building to delivery to use, kind of a thing.
Interesting. Mr. Parna, your thoughts?
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you, Professor Nandan, and thank you, the GABS team and CalZoom team for inviting me for this session. Actually, you pointed out very rightly from 2018 onwards, 18 October onwards, over the last almost 2.5 years, the industry is struggling in terms of, whether it is cash flow, whether it is volume, whether it is capacity utilization, whether it is workforce, management, because we're one of the largest workforce, I will say employer in with respect to other industries. But I think we are struggling a lot in terms of in all these things. And then obviously the disruptions have also happened in our industry in terms of case. Now in case of case like connected, autonomous share and electric, I think the autonomous part is slightly getting delayed in terms of India. But if you see connected and shared mobility and electric, I believe a lot of innovations and a lot of advancement has happened with the OEMs. Now, as far as the AI use cases are concerned, there are two sides of the use cases. One side of the use case is related with the consumer of the car, and the other side of the use case is related with the industrial use case. So, for example, the shop floor, the plant, the supply chain, HR, finance, and all other processes. So, if you just devise your strategy into two, one is the industrial side and another is the commercial and the customer side, I think the use cases will be vast. Now, which of the current use cases we are having, I'll cover both because I also worked 10 years for the OEMs and now for almost 5 years with the ancillary organization. And previously also I worked 2 years with Ancillary. So total 17 years I have worked in auto space, both the sides. So in the OEM side, the use cases are especially revolving around telematics, IoT. And IoT, when I say it's consumer IoT with respect to the car, and then obviously analytics. So when we say connected cars, the use cases will be like, since connected car is going to be a computer on the wheels, so everything is going to be managed, or I will say synchronized with respect to artificial intelligence or data analytics or telematics or connectivity with the ecosystem within the car, with the sensors, with the consumer, with the driver, and many other stuff. So there are a lot of use cases, and I believe the use cases are right now evolving slowly. If you see the EU market or the US market, things are in an advanced stage. But in India, since there are two-dimensional things, one side we have the economies of scale and also affordability, and on another side we have the innovation and other things. So I think both has to be adjusted, and that's one of the reasons where things are going always slow in India. But once the adoption starts for electric vehicle, obviously the push will happen for the autonomous and the other side as well. As far as the AI in the shop floor or the industrial AI side is concerned, we have use cases in 3 or 4 areas. Mostly I'll cover all the areas one by one. First is the manufacturing side. So when I say manufacturing, it's basically inventory control, inventory predictions. And why inventory? Because inventory is one of your largest contributor or major contributors in terms of cash flow and working capital. So ancillaries are mostly struggling with these are the 2 areas. One is cash flow and working capital. At the forefront, there is another challenge called customer forecasting, because of the market disruptions, the forecasts are also going haywire, and no forecasts are getting made due to all the OEMs are struggling, and the consumer market is not picking up, and all the pandemics are happening one by one, the waves are coming. So I think this is another area like where we want to do a accurate internal forecasting with the help of AI, and then how we can achieve that with respect to the macro and micro level issues. So these are then capacity planning. Say for an example, in ancillaries, lot of capex investment is there in terms of buying machines or new line setup. So if you know your capacities very well, suppose some of the plants there are excess capacities available, and you can shift those the excess capacities for making the spikes or something like that, then your capacity planning becomes much easier. Manpower planning is another area, because we employ around 23,000 people, and obviously we need to understand the current effectivity or optimization of utilization of people in terms of the manpower planning. Skill is another area. Say for an example, we have done some projects, some pilot projects actually. Say for an example, in one of the lines, there is a critical skill is required. So we have 3 types of skill: critical, semi-skilled or highly skilled, and low skilled, maybe 4 types you can say. So what kind of skill is required at what kind of line and what kind of activities also can be planned and is getting planned through the AI tools. One more thing, rider, I want to just put, and that's a fact, especially in automotive. I can tell you one thing: the accuracy of AI predictions are approximately 60 to 70% and not beyond that. Due to, it's not because of the failure of AI or machine learning, it is basically the problem with respect to the data availability. Either incorrect data is there, or the masters are not correct, or the kind of data we need to do the predictions are not available. So that's one of the major reasons the accuracy hangs around 60 to 70%. Apart from the 2
Mr. Parna, the accuracy is specifically what?
Accuracy of predictions. Yeah, when we say predictions through AI, because AI is basically used for the predictions, whether it is cash prediction, whether it is supply chain prediction, or some other areas. So 2 other more last areas I will focus before I conclude. So one is HR. So in HR, we are having some use cases, and we are going for some use cases, small POCs we have done in terms of prediction of attritions. So which are the employees more vulnerable, at which age group, which gender, which location, which organization, because we have 60 plus locations. So which location, which plant, which business, which unit, or which city. Then what is the demography of those attritions? I mean, what kind of qualification they have, which background they came from. So a lot of data is available, and we have SuccessFactors also implemented last year. So through which we are able to do certain analytics based on the data available. And the last but not the least is in finance. Finance, why is important? Because in ancillary organization, two areas are extremely important. One is manufacturing, and second is supply chain. Why supply chain? Because we are also dealing with tier 2s, tier 3s, and tier 4s. Now, when we are talking about tier 2, 3, and 4, we have a lot of issues in terms of delivery, quality, safety, capacity planning, cash flow issues, working capital issues. So there, this AI tool is, we have some tools. I'm not naming them right now because it will be a lot of time will be wasted there. So those tools are having supply chain financing policies and supply chain financing systems available in that. And there, when we look at the data sets, we can easily predict whom to fund, whom not to fund, whom we should provide advance payments, whom not to provide advance payments. What are the issues going to happen in terms of delivery, quality, safety with respect to all types of suppliers? So we have suppliers like platinum level, gold level, silver level suppliers, who is performing at what level. All these predictions and where to invest, where to focus upon, where the issues are going to come, where issues are not going to come, which of the suppliers may go for bankruptcy, which may not go for bankruptcy. This is another use case in terms of your supply chain financing and planning. So I think these are the use cases. So if I summarize, one is the manufacturing side. I am now not discussing the OEM side because it's already covered.
Yeah.
One is the manufacturing side, which captures your inventory planning, capacity planning, manpower planning, and skill. Second is the HR, which talks about attritions and potential, threats or risks in terms of your employees. And the third area is supply chain planning in terms of finance. So these are the generic use cases we have. Apart from the lot of other use cases are also going to come up, because use cases are something which are always evolving. So anyway, I think those are the things, will be in future definitely going to come up, and obviously we will be working on those. Last but not the least, AI single-handedly cannot work. So along with AI, we also are using largely, IoT and data analytics. So when big data analytics I'm talking about. So these three technologies combined is actually doing the disruption in the digital space or the IT space overall in the organization, where when we talk about auto ancillaries. Thank you.
Very interesting. So Mr. Balaji, Mr. Chandra from GABS, one question I have for you is, we heard from both Mr. Satej and Mr. Parna a whole host of areas where AI can play a role in the auto sector. Where do you think AI ops or concepts from AI ops can help and facilitate a change in the auto industry?
Thanks, Professor. One question I will have for both Satej and Parna, because especially the manufacturing sector is, I'm presuming in your manufacturing production lines or supply chain process which you have a lot of monitoring elements to ensure that things are happening on time and things are not happening on time, right? How do you tend to analyze those monitoring data? One is on the business side, another one is your entire IT is actually supporting all of those systems, your entire IT organization. How are you actually monitoring that every node, every component, every piece of what is creating their entire business process is actually working the way it should be working? Do you have substantial monitoring mechanisms in place? Do you have command centers looking at it and looking at how things are happening from a IT system supporting those business processes?
See,
go ahead, Mr. Parna.
Yeah. So basically, we have done around 5 implementations of IoT across the group at this point of time. So wherever we have implemented IoT, the data is automatically coming from the machines or the lines, and then we have the the analytics made at the back end, and we have a dashboard to display all these things. And the dashboard is available to senior management, middle management, and also in some of the cases the junior management. So that is one of the mechanisms. Second mechanism is, since it's a large location-based organization, so we already have SAP or the ERPs. I mean, so those ERPs ensure the data capturing happens on a manual basis today. Obviously, when we go for complete IoT, the data capturing also will happen through the the system itself. As on date, right now, So for 5 locations, as I was sharing, that we have already IoT, and where the data is automatically coming from the machines, whether it is related with OEE, the productivity, safety related data, quality, all this data is flowing through the system automatically. And obviously those are integrated with in the backend with the ERP. And then we have a BI layer, which we call the data warehouse layer, from where we do the data churning, the ETL process and other things, and then it is published in the dashboard. So we have around 600 dashboard users as well in the group, and we have implemented around 3 years back. So these dashboards. So that is available, as a mechanism. But yes, I mean, AI is one thing which we are in a very, very say pilot stage at this point of time. IoT we have already tested and it's working very good. AI, as I told you, the data is either not correct or rather, if not fully available, or it is incomplete. And that is one of the reasons the accuracies happen only to the tune of 60 to 70%. That is what we have seen so far.
Understand. Mr. Satyaj, your viewpoint, sir?
See, I would say there is a lot of data available in terms of triggers and IoT devices, sniffers, and going through PLC. But how to use that data for a proactive monitoring, it's a challenge. Okay. So which means a lot of data points are picked up, captured. They also go to the ERP for business process continuity. What happens practically are the break fixes or the breakdowns, and how do we attend those? And then after that has happened, how do we do a RC and prevent those? So challenge is that how do we put an intelligence or a cell in spite of having various dashboards to make a preventive mechanism and a team to take a proactive action? That is a challenge which we face, and that's where the managerial or the operational management part is an issue and challenge to take it further.
Understand. Yes. Interesting.
Sir,
over to you, Professor. And Chandra, yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chandra?
My thoughts here, Professor, on your question on role of AI or AI ops in automotive industry. See, gone are the days where the IT systems are used only for IT. Today, IT systems are used everywhere.
Yeah.
Particularly in this digital transformation world, this is used very heavily in the business. And any device, in fact, today, most of the device, whether it's a medical device or even the machine that is used to manufacture some of the parts of the car, all of them comes with an interface to which you can connect and collect the data. Today, none of the systems are non-IT connected interface. So as long as you have an interface and you have a system to collect the data, and there is a role for AI to play. Now, Parna talked about the prediction, connected cars, and one of the use cases for AI in automotive industry is to predict the failure of the component. Today, most of the cars comes today with completely digital, and you can actually collect the car data and make use of it. The Dematic system, if you can say the Dematic system, I'm not sure whether it is used in automotive industry, but definitely it is used in FMCG and manufacturing, which actually handles the supply chain, packaging, and shipping and all. So we are actually in one of the customer engagement, we are actually monitoring those Dematic systems. And we actually identify the problems in the system. And many times we actually prevented the outages because the Dematic system was about to have into that. So like the way, I think wherever there is a place to collect the data, I think there is a place for AI. I think I'm sure definitely there is a lot in automotive industry also.
Very interesting, Chandra. So no, a lot of this is very interesting. I thought we could shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit, get some insights from the banking and finance sectors. We have Mr. Prasanna from DCB Bank joining us here today. Sir, could you give us some insights into how changes are being made in the banking side with respect to data science? And again, which aspects do you see the greatest amounts of adoption in the short term, and where do you see the longer, the future going?
So thank you. So I was like waiting ki whether this am I getting any chance to talk or not?
No,
After
I
1
think
hour.
the only problem is that we got into everybody who joined late. So the lesson to be learned is if you
Yeah.
joined late, we can quickly jump on board.
No, I think I
No,
had
not at all.
joined on time, and I
I
was
know
waiting.
you
Yeah.
did. I know
So
that
I'm
was
not
my
sure,
joke. That was my
like,
dig at
and
others.
I'm being hearing a lot of expertise out here. I think quite a lot is happening. But I think AI is becoming normal technology in banking. So it's not like AI is such an emerging technology and banks are really making noise around that. It's not like that. So most of the banks understand AI. Tomorrow's banking is a bidirectional banking, and that can happen only if you adopt AI on time. And I think the banks who was really understands their customers, they most of the banks have adopted AI. The adoption could be at various level. It could be some of the use cases could be in production in the format of robotic process automation or a video KYC for most of the banks who are practicing, or at least bank knows that I had to work on AI and create some kind of a governance structure, people structure in AI side. Coming back at a DCB Bank, we have had created our own COE at Big Data AI, I think 3 to 4 years before itself. And I think 45 plus applications are being managed or monitored with the help of robotic process automation. So this is what we have seen. Like having those customer onboarding with the video KYC, wherein we utilize OCR technologies, right? So just to see whatever the documents being updated, uploaded by the customer, and at the end of the day to have some intelligence around how do we really sign it off through the audit process. That is a completely AI driven for us in a in this area. But I think when you talk about tomorrow's banking, right? So the tomorrow's banking will be all about how do you really drive your AI in the backend. So it's like when you do the digital transformation, it's for every company. Like on the front end, how are you migrating your migrating your operational areas, right? On mobile first, or tomorrow it could be IoT first. We heard about some of the things IoT first or wearable first. So those interfaces are ever changing, which we had seen in early 2000 web applications, and now mobile has become another form factor, and it will prevail for some more time while we enter with the 5G and augmented reality. So interfaces will be quite invisible. So when you talk about AI, how it will interact uh, with this invisible or visible interfaces through either form of APIs or some kind of RPA. That's how it will drive complete digital transformation. So AI will sit always in a mid or a front or maybe in the back of any of the transformation journeys. But I think when a customer, say example, I have so many customers and we are opening bank accounts of so many customers, right? Or even if you look at your example, you might have a more than two banks as a banking account. So how do I say that Prasanna has a bank account with me and he is my primary customer? Either what I can do, I can ask all my workforce to call every of your customer and be in touch with manually and take care of and engage the customers, right? And keep on doing this exercise on a regularly basis. But that is will be at a time consuming and error prone, and it will have a lot of cost consumption and operational overheads, right? But when you look at any of these technology like AI, which understands how to do the repetitive operations or how to understand data or how to understand customer transaction data and come back with some kind of analysis. Yeah, I think this customer is always with you, or this customer is not with you, and how do we engage him based upon his interest areas. So that is how we look at a bidirectional bank. So for what we have seen, customer was coming to you, either to your branch or either to your mobile banking app or either to your internet banking app, right? So now customer interface to the banking is now becoming more and more invisible. So customer is going away from your bank, but expecting your banking has to be there revolved around him. So that can be possible with a technology like AI or any of those emerging technologies. So I am sitting in my office, so I should know what is the transaction I am going to do based upon my aspiration to save so much of money, or based upon my financial planning which we have done, right? So likewise, you will see tomorrow's banking will be a bi-directional banking, and rather bi-directional, it will be like a marketplace banking. So the services which I am getting it on mobile app, tomorrow I want those services available in any of the apps, any of the non-banking apps also, like the way we see in Google Pays or Phone Pays or Yonos, right? Or Pick My Trip, or likewise super apps will be rising, and Paisa Bazaar and all of these marketplaces are already there. So what is that we will look at? A customer who is coming onto the marketplace for these services for account opening, he will go for a certain bank, provided the bank is offering better services, better security, and better rates, and so on. So in the back end, if I had to again go back to these customers and understand why this is not coming to me, why he is going to bank B, right? So all those exercises we can do after understanding of AI. So I think most of the banks, most of the digital heavy banks have started doing it, and along with AI, they are adopting heavily cloud also, because those algorithms to run on those heavy data, it is cannot be possible on a your managed server. So I think adoption of the cloud will be huge while we adopt AI or big data also in parallelly. And I think coming back, it is not only customer engagement or customer servicing. AI is helping for employees to improve their efficiency. Say example, one of my say example, we have a Balaji out there, right? So how can I improve Balaji's performance compared to Satej? Like Satej is, if Balaji has to reach to the Satej's level, he has to do these 5 different tasks. Those kind of engagements or those kind of experiments are also happening at our bank level, so that we see as a, it's like a gamification, right? Divide a complete set of your front end staff or Salesforce staff into different teams, and see how one team can really go ahead of the other team, and this will be nudges or notification for those employees. If you do these 5 tasks, I think you will really reach to this your KRA, and like how overall bank's performance can go to the next level. So I think what we have seen internet adoption, right? Now internet has become a backend of every application, right? For external customer, internal customer. So likewise, I think these emerging technologies are taking shape, and getting into your internal apps, or getting into your employee engagements, how employees are really looking at the screens, how much they really work and come out, and all these things are really getting into the normal scene in various softwares. So when you look at the future of AI or any of the technologies, what we'll see, a platform based or a platform based banking will rise heavily here. It's like whatever service providers which we have in this forum. So certainly would like to see, right, a platform coming into and banking, and sees that I can connect your any of the data points. Okay, on the left side and the right side, I will give all of these insights or predictive analysis within a 1 day, 2 day, right? So likewise, a lot of platforms will rise, and will get into fit into the banking ecosystem. So the banks who has a right architecture on ESBs or APIs or microservices or on cloud, or a bank who has a right set of people, I think for them it will be very easy to adopt any of those emerging tech things. But on the other side, right, I think Nandanji, I think you can also agree, AI adoption so far, right? It could be, it see, AI has a tremendous capacity or capability to really create another person and send him for this conference and talk or speak just the way I do it, provided this algorithm does understand all my reactions, actions, and that's a supernatural AI is yet to come, right, in our life. What we have is a narrow or something like supervised, or something like the way we give the instructions, right? On chatbot or conversational banking, or you talk about your any of those RPAs, which is now getting into intelligent automations. So this journey will be I think after 5 to 6 years. I think today we are not regulated AI, but I think certainly we will see some kind of regulation might come, considering how much to automate, right, or what to automate. I can certainly automate everything in bank, right? But do I do I really want to do that and look at my employees, what they will do, or how they will risk it for something else. So I think how much to automate, what to automate based upon every bank's orbit. So today I don't want to become AI first or a complete digital first, right? Maybe after 10 years or after 15 years, banking will be quite different. We can't predict, right? But I think we should be ready for those things, right? Otherwise, is the same customer who is banking with your nearing branch, or is the same customer is looking for similar kind of a product which your bank is really looking at it. So more and more platformification, consolidation of things will certainly will happen. The way we have seen UPI, which is a consolidation of payment ecosystem, like or ATM or core banking, right? Similarly, tomorrow's data understanding, right? Account aggregator is an entity which will come and may become live in a couple of years heavily. But the data which will share between all these entities which are on AI, right? How much to share? Who will be having those control on the data, and who will really churn this data and come out with the insights for your customer or your banks? I think this will be all taken care with the right regulation and the right security aspects. Uh, I think the organization who will really have a better AI practices and better AI guidelines, I think those will be quite successful in the coming few years. Otherwise, what we are seeing now, there are some business models of a banking are getting wiped out, right? For example, during pandemic, branches are hardly getting utilized, right? Or and after pandemic, this customer behavior is certainly changing. They want everything around them on mobility, contactless, and they want some kind of a guidance from your app. Morning I am getting up, what is there for me throughout the day, right? So which big tech companies are doing heavily nicely, and the big tech companies are really touching all your lifestyle. So one of the aspect of lifestyle is insurance or banking or food habits, entertainment, everything they are covering. So I think banks has to really see how they can be create a sustainable model or a collaboration model with these big techs or fintech companies here onwards, right? So similar kind of activities we are also doing collaboration with fintech companies, or could be in AI or SME side. I think in a nutshell, Nandiji, I would like to comment that the banks or organization who will really have a inclination to a reskilling of their people, and looking at adding the new roles or creating new roles for their existing things, or identifying right set of processes to automate in the next 6 months. They can automate all the hundreds of use cases or processes, but what to automate to really meet their targets for this year or next year? And technology adoption with a right pace, right? If they say I will adopt aramse in the next 2-3 years AI, or I will just look at how big tech or other banks will adopt big data, so I think they will be left out. And while adopting this people process tech, in a nutshell, we have to see what regulation is talking all about around this, right?
Correct.
And how other collaborations can really help with them. Otherwise, for example, today, 3 years before, I had a capacity to build internal COE. But after 2 years, I will not have that capacity. I need to rely on some partner or some immediate platform so that my journey becomes faster, right? And while doing all these things, it's very, very important to engage customer, talk physically to the customer, right? So at least in Indian context, everything cannot be automated. I need to talk to Mr. X, Mr. Y, or Miss X, Miss Y, and understand how their journey is going on. So I think while we automate a lot, but I think human factor will be also helpful to really understand sentiments. Although there are some aspects in contact center which we are looking at for repetitive queries, right? How can we really utilize the conversational banking or chatbots, right? But at the same time, we will always keep that human factor available in our contact center. We will never automate fully whatever it may happen, right? Because at least in India, the way customer we have, it really wants some personalization, some voice. But it's, I think we have seen some of the experience of some of the startups. So we run a program called Innovation Carnival, wherein we work with closely with the startup ecosystem, and we keep on giving those problem statements through our hackathons or pitch sessions. And so what we have seen, some of the contact centers can be really replicated or with the robots, right? So supports, and they can really act on work and with the right set of expressions, right? And maybe and they will never take any leave. They will not make
Yeah.
any excuses that today is raining, so I will not come, this and that. But I
Yeah.
think we have to really see the balance between automation and human life, or our life, which is around us. I
Yeah.
think what AI comes and says, I am here for a benefit of a human society. Last point which I will talk about is around sustainable goals, right? UN has announced the 17 sustainable goals, SDGs, right? And what UN or World Economic Forum says that few of them, like zero corruption or something relevant to good health, the way we have seen during pandemic, health is very important, or better use of ICTs. So I think these goals are climate change, right? How do you really take care of more of a green in the earth? So I think what this says, if you can adopt AI now, I think you have a very good sustainable life for human life, right? So I think that's how we have to look at a green AI, or really look at how it can be really helpful, not only for organizations or banks or maybe countries, or at a larger level at a world. So I think AI comes and acts as a radical change agent and says, I am there. So let's work towards the transformation journey. So today we talk about digital transformation, right? So tomorrow it could be human transformation, because tomorrow's need to be all around your human life, human in an automation era. We'll always talk about how we give a peace or a better lifestyle to humans. So today I think we do lot many juggleries with the collaboration ecosystem, right? Tomorrow it will be like, I am just sitting out here, I want everything to happen my car automatically should go and refuel and maintain, or maybe there will not be anything called as a maintenance for a car, right? Or tomorrow our smart houses will become a form factor for a banking transaction, right? Your refrigerators, your tubelets will do the repayment of things. I sitting at a home, I just look at my mobile phone and see how is my condition at my office or home. And I think lot of things will be autonomous with the 5G adoption and more machine adoption. I think likewise there will be huge adoption of so AI will not be only a technology which will say I am going to change everything. AI in combination with the blockchain, or combination with IoTs, or combination with any of those newer technologies like
sure. In fact, I mean, even AI and IT have become like a seamlessly merged thing, right? Right now, it's almost impossible to think of an organization being only IT, or anyone being only AI. But no, very interesting points, Mr. Prasanna. I just wanted to ask you one more directed question, maybe open the question to you as well as the GAVS team. At IIT Madras, and I'm a member of the Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and AI, and also the American Express Lab for Data Analytics, Risk and Technology. Finance is a very strong vertical, right? And one of the repeated use cases that we keep seeing is fraud detection. So that ranges all the way from
likewise.
So just to kind of set the context for the question, sir. So we see this across the board, in like ranging from all the way from credit cards to activity to capital markets and so on. One question is this is one of my thoughts and hypothesis, and maybe both Mr. Prasanna as well as the GAVS team can chime in. At the root of all of fraud detection is a lot of anomaly detection, right? Is some behavior anomalous? And I know that question is there in all the other verticals and sectors as well. So for instance, in IT as well, like you care about an anomalous behavior. So to what extent do you see there being a commonality, and to what extent do you see the root of detecting anomalies as a central tenet to one application in finance such as fraud?
So if you allow me, say example, banks sits in a glass houses, right? In the sense they can be attacked anytime. So they need to really safeguard 24/7. So quite a lot of things are happening apart from awareness at employees or awareness at a customer. So we look at how technology can be really helpful, like a fraud management tools, right? So which is a recommendation by regulators to be implemented at every bank, which is happened. But these FRM tools are monolithic in the sense that they understand the particular behavior, accordingly they react. But what we are looking at, how can we create a customer persona, right? 360 persona to understand customers data and create a profile of the customer. And if all of a sudden this profile is getting changed, so give a immediate notification internally to your FRM operations team or a customer, right? So it can be added with the right set of authentication levels. We call it as adaptive authentication levels, right? So that could be the one way to look at how AI can be really helpful to understand the data. That's the one thing. Another area is like along with the blockchain and the AI, wherein I know that these are the bad IPs to be faced by a bank A, and suddenly this bank A can really put those bad IPs on the blockchain, and our algorithms can understand, immediately take care of blocking these bad IPs at a bank B also, right? So that's how I think collaboration, I think, which I was talking about, the more consolidation will happen, and the data side also. So how I can utilize the data of other entity and take immediate actions. Third thing which I can see what is going to happen, that I can really weight a complete network, and I can give a value or index at a organization level. Today value is X, and if some change CR or a change at a network level or any of those endpoints or any of those data, right? So I know that X will become X2 or XB. But all of a sudden, if it is become ABC, it is the something which is anomaly which will come. I think that kind of a thing. Certainly, I'm looking at who is that service provider who can really come up and say your hash value of this was X, but now it has become automatically because of some malware, which was not really there earlier. So immediately let's go and tackle this situation. I think this could be few examples, sir. I think
so.
Let's hear from Gabs Technologies how they want.
Yeah, so I was about to ask, saying, so how close are we, Mr. Chandra, to being such a service provider?
Yes. First of all, thanks, Prasanna, for giving more insights on the fraud detection. It was very interesting. So, Professor and Prasanna, fraud detection is the most difficult but most wanted use case for me. Everybody would love to have that. Just 20 years ago, banks were dealing with the rule-based programs to detect a fraud. But particularly today, the market, the consumer behavior, consumer capacity, and other factors continuously change the environment, and the rules for fraud and the genuine purchases keep changing. So it would be very difficult for a rule-based program to detect that. It can't be boxed into any rules. It's very dynamic. So AI is the best technology to detect near 100% fraud. I won't say 100%, because Parna said that accuracy of the prediction can never be 100%. Whatever be the good amount of data, but AI can be used to detect 100% of the fraud, because it's able to understand the behavior and patterns of each customer. Prasanna, you talked about that. Individual persona varies. You can't create a rule for each person, but AI actually can do that. AI can continuously look at the spendings of each person and understand the behavior, and then it can detect anomalies. So any fraud is an anomaly, and it can actually identify that anomaly and alert the deviation. So the anomaly detection algorithm that we have as part of that zero incident framework can very well be used to find out the fraud spending or suspicious money transfers, because for the algorithm, it's a data and it's a pattern and finding out the anomalies. So I think the AI is very well positioned to detect fraud detections better today than what it was about a decade ago, Professor.
As we come close to the end of our time, let me pick up on one thing that I heard Mr. Chandra talk about how historically systems used to be rule-based, right? And so at least in our circles, we have a kind of a pyramid structure where you have a rule-based approach, and that's the first 101 of data science and automation. And then you have the framework where you bring in data and you can learn from data. And the last layer that we kind of see is one where you have pre-trained models, or you have transfer learning, or you have the learning on the job kind of an approach. Now, somewhere where we are in this between rule-based all the way to this other extreme really depends on practicality, return on investment, and whether the AI is there in the first place or not. Maybe I can open up the floor to all of our panelists to comment on this and see where are they in this spectrum in terms of AI readiness, right? When you say AI, are you still thinking business intelligence in the form of smarter rules and using heavily the human beings because that is the most practical and useful? Or are you talking about, no, just bring me the data, my code will learn and come up with predictions and insights? Or are we saying, don't even worry about the data, I'm so advanced that I can learn on the job and replace the human being? One is more promising, but maybe more impractical. One is more practical, but maybe it's only an incremental change. Where are we in this spectrum?
Can I start, Professor?
Sure, please.
Okay. First of all, thanks for you to in helping us work on the third stage that you have described. Yes, 10 years ago, we were just doing the traditional automation, the rule-based automation, then it became the intelligent automation. Intelligent automation is always done at the fag end of the process. So some systems will detect some alerts, then AI systems correlate, predict and prescribe, then the resolution took place. It's kind of okay, but I think in this world of AI, where we are moving towards better and better AI and lesser human efforts, the shift is actually moving towards the source. Instead of generating an event or anomaly and then applying a resolution, why don't we detect at the source itself and apply the prescription there itself? That is what you talked about, Professor, at the third stage, where the reinforcement learning techniques can be applied. The system on its own understands the behavior, and it also knows what is the right level and what's the acceptable and unacceptable level, which quite varies from system to system. So we don't need to set anything. Once it reaches the unacceptable level, then automatically applies the prescription and brings the system back to normal. So everything is actually detected and resolved at the source itself, instead of generating that out and letting some other system do that. It is very early stage, Professor, and thanks to you, GAFS and Zero Incident Framework are adopting that, and we have built a few agents which can actually detect at the source and correct. But the world will take at least 2 or 3 years to come there.
Interesting. Perhaps I could open up the floor to the other panelists for concluding remarks and comments on this topic. Great. No, so Balaji, could I invite you to perhaps conclude our
session will today? Do. Thank you, everybody. Parna, Prasanna, Satej, Milind, all of you who have joined. Really appreciate taking the time, Sudhakar, taking the time to really share your thoughts, share your views, share your initiatives, and trying to drive towards a better world, a better operations, better patient care, and keep progressing in the forward journey of automation, analytics, and bringing in new technology. So sincere thanks to all of you for taking your time, precious time, to be part of this conversation. Professor Nandan, as always, he's been a great mentor and guide for us. Professor, thank you very much for taking your time to moderate the session and really make it very interesting conversations, interesting viewpoints. And Prasanna, believe me, a lot of insights. Thank you for that. Really appreciate your points which you shared.
Yeah, I think I just want to add, Balaji, I think such a expert panel across various industries, right? So I think we heard how industry is really moving around adoption. So thank you so much for this opportunity to learn from other experts also.
No, absolutely.
And really very good moderation, Mr. Nandan.
No, thank you so much.
He's a stalwart in AI. He's a big proponent of AI. He keeps pushing us, and what GAFS has achieved in Zero Incident Framework and AI as a service, a lot of it has got to do with what Professor Nandan has been helping us with his acumen, with his experience. So thank you all for taking participation. We shall be in touch and look forward to talking to you soon or touching base with you. I really appreciate you taking the time. Be safe and be well. And Ipsita and team from Kalzoom, thank you for really helping us arrange this and making this wonderful. Thanks all. Have a pleasant weekend. Stay safe and stay well, and we shall be in touch. Take care. Thank you very much.